Hello everybody! Welcome to the behind the scenes production gallery for Alpha Team Mission Deep Jungle. I'm Andrew Bermudez, the director, writer, and producer for the film, as well as one of the minor actors. And today I would like to talk about the behind the scenes process that went into the film, while you can check out the different production shots for all of the different sets that are featured in the movie. Now, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's probably a good idea to do that now before you watch this, because two things. One, you probably won't get what I'm talking about, and two, there's a lot of spoilers in this behind the scenes, so if you don't want to be spoiled on anything, again, just watch the movie first. It'll be worth it. Now, as we start with the first set that we filmed on, which was Antarctica, I would like to take this time to start with where the idea came from, because this set ties heavily into that. You see, back in 2005, when the Alpha Team theme officially ended, the story was left on a cliffhanger that was never actually completed. So this beginning was done as a way to basically make that ending work, make that ending happen, and then tie it into the rest of the film to make this more or less a continuation. You see, in general, I started working on this film back in 2012. And that was when I started working on the script. You see, around that time, I had finished working on Gone Ice Fishing, or I should say that I was almost done with Gone Ice Fishing. And while I was working on that, I was also started working on this script, because I came up with this idea of, let's finish up that story and then do another story of Alpha Team many, many years later. And that is where the general idea came from. And I got the script done about in a few months, but because I was working on Johnny Thunder 3 at the time, I had to push off the development of this Alpha Team movie, which is why it came out so much later than Johnny Thunder 3 did. And then now we're moving on to the second set, which is Alpha Team HQ. In this set, if you look closely, you may notice some bricks sticking up on top of the walls. Those are actually to hold the four walls together, because you see, in order to get all these camera angles, each wall is removable, but I don't want the other walls wobbling around while I'm filming. So they're all tethered together, and then I just detach one of the walls when I need to remove it, but the camera's always pointing the other way so you don't see it. But the interesting thing about this set was, there was a really tricky part about building it. It's actually the window right here. You see, the big issue here is that the window is not going straight up. It's actually leaning out a little bit. So I had to put in a few Technic pins and things like that. Getting it angled out, but still getting into a position where it was stable, connected, and stationary was pretty difficult to achieve. I managed to do it, but it was a little tricky to do. And another fun fact about this set was that this set was actually left assembled through the production of pretty much the entire movie, because this set is actually going to be used again in future movies. Another fun fact is this Alpha Team HQ model right here is so small, it can actually fit inside the briefing room set with room to spare. It's an interesting thing. It looks much bigger in the movie than it is in real life. And as always, the film was not filmed in order, so the next set that we went to was actually a hangar scene, which briefly appears right before the mission briefing room, but significantly appears much farther into the movie. And you can see a bunch of little details here. A fun little detail I want to point out right now is up in Cam's workshop. There is a white construction worker helmet up there. And you're probably wondering what's so significant about that. Well, you see, before Lego Alpha Team, the computer game was a thing. Before then, the idea was to do something called Lego Logic. It was this weird thing. It's hard to explain, but essentially, in that game, Cam was supposed to be a mechanic, and she wore a white construction worker helmet. So when I was designing the set, I thought, why don't I just put in that little white construction worker helmet as like a little throwback to Lego Logic for those who are in the know, and for everyone else, it's just a little extra detail that adds a little bit of character to the set. And then there's other little things here. Again, a bunch of little hidden props with the workshop and everything. Another thing about this set was I was kind of being economic about bricks, so most of the walls were formed by the gray backdrop that I have on hand. Once we were done with the base scenes, then it was time to go into the deep jungle, as it were. And when we went into the jungle, the first scene that we filmed there actually was surprisingly the very, very, very end of the movie, where Mr. Cunningham meets Baron Typhonus. I feel this is a very important scene, not necessarily in the specific storyline of this particular movie, but it plays an important part in tying this film into Project U and its developing storyline. And this scene, I feel, really helps push that. It also signifies that Mr. Cunningham is going to be coming back. It signifies that Baron Typhonus is going to be coming back, that he's going to play a much larger role later on in the subsequent movies that he's in. And in general, I like how this scene turned out. A lot of it was digitally composited in later, but what's nice is that I did it in such a way that it blends in pretty well. Like, when I added in the vortexes later in the computer and things like that, I did it with, like, adding shadows and things like that to create a higher sense of realism with effects that in the past I felt a little fake, if you know what I mean. And then we move on to the Brazil airfield, where, looking at these pictures, I'll have to admit the airplane looks pretty oversized compared to everything else. Anyway, again, kind of like Cam's workshop, I put in like little hidden props and details in there, though more specific to this very different kind of setting. I got a radio in there with a special message that again plays into what happens later on. And for this scene, I actually was the first time I had to handle a certain issue, and that was the issue of Steve Kenlow. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, you should probably watch now because this is a major spoiler. For those who have, you can continue. But essentially, what happens in the movie is that Alpha Team gets this DVD resume from this potential recruit named Steve Kenlow, but they're cut short by the distress call that sends them to the Amazon rainforest. But what they don't know is that Steve Kenlow has also come in, and he's kind of trailing behind them. He's not really with the team at the moment. He's kind of like staying in the underbrush. And at the airfield, you see Steve Kenlow's back go behind the hangar at the airfield, but I had to do it in such a way in that the figure looked mysterious, and you couldn't tell that it was Steve Kenlow. It needed to remain a secret until the very end of the movie. So that was a bit of a challenge here. Other than that, I don't really remember any significant issues here. And then we get to the trek through the rainforest on this set, which was actually used twice in the movie, in one shot after the next. You see what happened. The way we did it is that what I did was I rearranged trees after I finished filming the first scene. And so then when the next scene came, it would look like another part of the Amazon rainforest, even though it was really just the same set. And while the monkey scene was thrown in to tie this movie to Johnny Thunder 3, because this monkey is supposed to be the same monkey that helped Sarah in that film, we had a lot of trouble with that monkey. Yeah, our animal trainers were just driven bananas by it. Wow, not even the crickets are chirping with that one. Okay, now let's move on to the Quicksand set. Here's an interesting story about this set. This was originally not going to be in the movie. This was added in later because we needed to have a reason for Cam to fall and have the accident in the final battle, and we felt that by having it where her knee is in pain, she has trouble walking for the rest of the mission, would be a decent way to convey that. It's not conveyed that well in the movie, to be honest, but it is what it is. And now we get to the road that cuts through the jungle. This was kind of a tough thing to write because you see in the original movie, Alpha Team lands and then they immediately find the road. So all the other things like Mr. Cunningham, the Quicksand that I just mentioned, and those things like that were actually added in later for just to make things happen along the way and also to tease future movies and whatnot. But as for this particular scene itself, you see back in the earlier versions of the script, Dash and Charge were supposed to get into a major argument over how to follow this Ogle supply truck to the base where they believe Whitney Kamen is being imprisoned. And there are different versions of it throughout the years. At one point, they just fired the beacon on there, and then I don't remember. I think it's like just Charge just slides. Well, maybe what it was, if I remember correctly, in the original script, Charge slides underneath. Cam does not fire the beacon onto the truck, and the other team members just follow the road when they get captured. And it kept on changing. Like there was one part where they got into a huge, bitter argument. Charge stomps away, does his own thing. Cam fires the beacon shooter onto there, and then there's a resolution later on near the end. And it felt like that it was to the point where it was so exaggerated that some of the people writing the script, or I should say, editing the script, felt that they made the team feel too disunified, if you know what I mean. So it was toned down a little bit. You kind of get an idea of that tension in the actual movie, where Dash and Charge debate, and that's a little bit left over from that more intense moment in the movie. Oh, and by the way, here's a couple quick shots of the studio where Charge finds out the big secret that the distress call was fabricated and it was all part of a trap to capture Alpha Team so Ogle would have them out of the way so he could conduct his plans without any interference whatsoever. Speaking of traps, here's the trap that Ogle uses to capture Alpha Team. Interesting thing about the bars that spring up in this scene, I should say, they're actually Lego door pieces. They then use special pieces to turn sideways so that instead of opening out, they open up. So they look like the panels of trap. They look like the panels for a trap that are hidden inside brush. And then I use the knob studs to attach some plant pieces to cover it up. There's not that much to the set. It's a bit of a variation of the road set. So that's that. Now to go to an imprisonment of a very different sort. Here is inside the prison hut in Cunningham's camp. And if you look here, again, this is assembled a lot like the briefing room set, where each wall is designed to be able to be popped off, so then I can angle the camera in, and so I can get in all of the best angles. But what's interesting about the way this set is built is there's no connector pieces, because this set is supposed to be designed to look as poorly built and as ramshackle as possible to get the idea that this place was slapped together, feels very amateurishly built, feels very haphazard, to make it then no surprise that this whole camp collapses due to the poor design of these structures. And here is the entirety of Mr. Cunningham's camp. Originally, it was supposed to be much bigger, but to be fair, I actually ran out of pieces, so I had to make some of the buildings a little shorter, a little smaller, things like that. Now, you're probably wondering why I have this whole camp on stilts. The idea in the story is that Mr. Cunningham's men have built a camp that can withstand the rainy season of the rainforest, of the Amazon rainforest, and its subsequent flooding. So they're up on stilts to keep these huts out of the water even after the rainforest has flooded during the rainy season. And by doing that, add a little bit more character to it. That's why they have like a car boat there. It's for that same reason. And also exemplifying the idea seen for the interior of the prison hut, I again went with that whole ramshackle look. And if you look at the supports, none of them are going straight up and down. I intentionally built them so that they could twist and turn back and forth in such a way in that they wouldn't look stable. They wouldn't look like they could hold up weight. But what's interesting about them is that they are actually very stable. I actually built the connectors to be super stable so that these buildings would only topple when I needed them to. And now we get to the big bad Ogle's Jungle Fortress. Bum bum bum. Complete with its own evil Ogle-style skull, which is actually a throwback to the 2001 Alpha Team sets, though this skull is built with newer parts to create sort of an integration between the past sets and the present style of LEGO sets. In general, though, this set is actually inspired mostly by the base that is briefly seen in the opening cutscene for the LEGO Alpha Team video game. So there's a lot of parts here that are used that are similar or the same as those that are featured in that cutscene. There's a lot of similar angles, a lot of similar colors, but at the same time I also did an integration of foliage and stonework motifs to also integrate this design into the jungle. So you'll see like plants growing up the sides, you'll see a little bit of rock work to create that sort of dichotomy. So it's something that looks distinctly like something Ogle would have, but at the same time something that is also in the jungle. So this is it's not just another Ogle base. Going inside the base, here's the prison where Alpha Team is locked up, though they do escape through a ventilation shaft. And just like the other interior sets, this one, every wall can be removed to get the camera to squeeze into there. And just as seen in the movie, the sliding door does actually open and close. Okay, this set I had a lot of fun designing. This is the armory that the ventilation shaft from the prison leads to. So I had a lot of fun in here. I was like, any weapon I have, just grab it and throw it in there. It's mostly brick arms guns that are in there, but there's other stuff in there. I have swords, I have laser guns, I have knives, I think there's a paddle in there if I remember correctly. But if you look in this photo, I even threw in the kitchen sink as a joke, as to say that there's so much in there they even have the kitchen sink. And last but not least, the Orb Factory that is destroyed at the very end of the movie. And again, this is inspired by also by the opening cutscene from the Alpha Team video game, but also has a couple other throwbacks to that game as well. For example, it's never stated in the movie, but that giant red and black machine in the room that the orbs are coming out of is actually called the Doom Machine 2.0, again as a throwback to the game, and also to suggest that it comes after the original sets. But there's other things that I threw into here too. I wanted to make it look very industrial. I wanted to make it look like there's a lot of drones that work in here, so I put a lot of barrels all over the place. I put a lot of containment units where orbs are manufactured. Just in general, I built a lot of things in here with purpose. The only thing that is kind of questionable in my view is probably the smasher that comes down in the movie. It seems a bit pointless, and the only reason I put it in there, to be honest, is because it was in the script and it was called for. But other than that, I really like the way the set came out. All of like the bins, the dollies, the barrels. Again, creating that industrial feel. And that concludes the behind-the-scenes production gallery for Alpha Team Mission Deep Jungle. Now, before I go, I'd like to remind you a few things. Now, first off, don't forget to visit our official website at mustachemaniacsfilmco.webs.com. Don't forget to like our Facebook page. Don't forget to visit the press room. Don't forget to check out the wiki where you get information on all things related to our official cinematic universe, and so forth and so forth. Also, we're running a contest right now called The Canon That Time Forgot. Don't forget to check that out. And last but not least, we are still running auditions, so if you have not auditioned yet, go to our website, go to the auditions page, and sign up for auditions today. Thank you for watching.